Hello, and welcome to Women Speak, a production of the Women's Resource Center in Wayne. I'm your host, Mojdeh Keykhah, and each month I focus on a topic that is of interest to women and the people they care for. This interview is being conducted via Zoom during the Coronavirus Crisis 2021 on MLTV Mainline Network. Today, Women Speak is happy to have WRC board member and chair of its task force on diversity, equity, and inclusion, Bridgett Battles. Ms. Battles is an executive presence strategist, diversity and inclusion thought leader, transformational speaker, and self-described planet shaker. With a presence and a passion that is larger than life, Ms. Battles is a woman whose purpose knows no bounds. While she holds several professional titles, she is known for an immeasurable impact that cannot be defined. From transforming the images of highly successful women to igniting stages as a speaker, Bridgett immediately elevates every space and life that she steps into. Bridgett is also a foundational team member of the Enterprise Office of Diversity and Inclusion at Thomas Jefferson University and Jefferson Health. Bridgett, I'm excited and honored that you are joining us on Women Speak today, and that we will be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion at the Women's Resource Center.
Mojdeh, I'm so happy to be here with you today. I've been anticipating this conversation, and I have to tell you that. So being able to talk about things that you're passionate about, things that you absolutely love, it just builds up such excitement. So I'm ready to get into the conversation.
Well, we're ready to plug into that excitement, Bridgett. And we wanted to start out with your involvement with the WRC has now been for several years. And how did you get involved in the beginning with the WRC?
So, Mojdeh, I relocated to the Pennsylvania area from North Carolina. And so during my process of relocating and really getting my footing and figuring out, my career, as well as where I thought that I could make impact, I began to search and, start to look at different nonprofit organizations who I felt that I could provide a sense of value. And that became so important to me because I feel like as women, we all need to be connected to a power source or connected to a mentor or connected to someone who can help speak life into you, someone who can empower you, and someone who can strengthen you. And so connecting with the Women's Resource Center, the first thing I heard about was the luncheon. So I heard about the luncheon, and I had just met Kelly Cornish. And so I volunteered to be on the luncheon committee. And the moment that I got in that space with all of these women and started to hear the transformational stories, I knew that the Women's Resource Center was a place that I needed to be involved with because I was so committed to the outcomes. So it's been several years now, and I am loving the journey.
That is so wonderful. We are so glad to have you, Bridgett. And can you explain more about our topic, the DEI? What is DEI?
So DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, and inclusion is an action. And so I'm thinking specifically, when it comes to WRC, when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, WRC's community and staff is made up of so many different people. And so it's so important that we are a diverse organization. That is how you get different concepts, different ideas, different suggestions. And most important, you create this inclusive atmosphere by giving people a sense of belonging, a sense of acceptance. And even though we all may be different in some ways, there's still a lot of ways that we are similar. So, this work is a work that we've started and we are committed to this work.
It sounds like there's a lot of energy right from the get-go. And what is the impetus to engage WRC with this effort with DEI? What was the reasoning behind it?
So I think it's several things. And one of the things that I think is so important when we are in this space that we're in now with our recent social injustice, everybody is making a statement. I mean, everybody's making a statement. And so it's so important that, WRC not only make a statement, but also show action. We don't want to get lost in this digital space where we are just making statements and don't prove the work and don't show our community that we're invested in them. Don't show the men and the women, who hear about WRC, whether or not it's through outreach or donations or, no matter what the service is, but showing that we are invested. And so I think about not just our social injustices that have happened, but also our current country and climate. It is so important that we are in a place to really move the organization forward. And, part of moving the organization forward is really paying attention to where we are in the DEI space. And then the flip side of that is that when you have leadership who is committed to this work, that is a huge force behind DEI. One of the things that those of us in the DEI space say that it's one thing to say that you are invested in the work, but it's another thing when you put action behind the work and you put finances behind the work. And WRC has done both. I think about church a little bit. And one of the things that in the scripture, it says that, your treasure is where your heart is, And so for those of us, whatever you believe, but, the things that you have a heart for, those are the things you put your resources, you put your time, you put your energy toward. And WRC's leadership puts their time, their energy toward this great work, because we know the impact of this organization is not just about transforming lives. We give you the transformation, but it needs to be sustained. And this work does that.
That sounds like the exciting meetings that I've attended about DEI. And I'd like to know, Bridgett, how is it being implemented from the top with you as task force chair?
So several things, and I have to give a shout out to our WRC board, because WRC's board has approved the strategic plan. And the strategic plan is which drives the focus, which drives the goals. And so we have several goals that we have set out for the organization, also with action items so that we can kind of monitor our progress going forward. And so I'll list a couple of those action items. One of the things that we have done, which I'm so proud of, and that is when it comes to board recruitment. Having a diverse board is so important. And our board recruitment now is really consistent on making sure that we're recruiting diverse board members and that we are giving the visual. We're giving the visual not just in words and actions, but also our conversation. So even during the board recruitment, we're having, uncomfortable conversations in our board meetings. We're having brave conversations. We're having courageous conversations. And so that has been one thing that I've seen so much, power, so much energy, excitement, and people are open to listen with their heart. And people are sharing. So that's one area. Another area is really talking to our helpline volunteers, making sure our helpline volunteers have the appropriate language, that they are prepared to answer calls, not just from the crisis mechanism, but also from the diverse mechanism, knowing how to greet people appropriately, knowing how to make people feel a part and belonging. So that's been another thing that we've been able to do that I'm super happy about that, the training. And then something else that is really, really great that Cheryl, the executive director, and I have been working on, and that is now really creating, a space where we get, evaluations and feedback when we have events, and even when it comes to the staff, making staff feel like they belong and asking them 3 questions. And so I wanted to share with you today, which I was so excited, some of the 3 questions that we worked on, which I think is so important. And one of them is being able to, even when it comes to staff, asking staff, do you feel like you belong? Do you feel like you are part of WRC? The second thing is so important. And that is, I can voice a contrary opinion without fear of negative consequences. And if we could park right there for a minute, Mojdeh, we want to create an atmosphere, a continuous atmosphere where people can share from their heart and not feel like they're judged and not feel afraid. We want people to feel like they belong and that they have people that support them throughout their process. And the last one is perspectives like mine are included in decision making. So it's one thing to be invited to the dance. It's another thing to be asked to the dance. But me and my diversity colleagues had this great conversation. I want to be on the planning committee for the dance. I want to be a part of it. So I think, all those things right there are, some of our top 3 things that we're working on, but there's so many more things we're working on.
That sounds incredible. I really liked your 3 questions and how it ties into the diversity, equity, and inclusion current planning at WRC. And could you give us a sneak peek into any future plans?
Yes. So the task force meets. And so we have this great partner, Dr. Tiffany Archie from Temple, and we have been doing some amazing breakout sessions. And one of the things that has provided such great value, and we have been discussing, is having each team, each breakout group talk about barriers. What are barriers they see with WRC? Sharing those barriers, and then us collectively talking about how do we get past these barriers? And here's the great thing. When you have these conversations about how to pass these barriers, then you create actionable items. And when you create actionable items, that is how you get your desired outcome. And so having these breakout sessions for us to really talk about the barriers, talk about, things that are so important to WRC and its mission and its goals and vision, and being able to have everybody participate. That is one thing where we'll see a huge change with that. The other thing that I find that, has been so great with WRC when it comes to really creating this DEI plan and this DEI structure is that the commitment level. The commitment level is great from the board, but I have also seen the fruit of the commitment level from the staff. So, and I don't feel that anybody who is committed to it, it feels forced or feel what we like to call voluntold. People are committed because they want to be a part of this work. And one of the things that I have become so, passionate about and get excited about is that the more and more we do this work, everybody realizes that we are this work. We are the work. And when you are the work and then you see the change that you can make, in your local community, when you see the change that WRC can make in this local community, not only do we reach people who are within the Wayne area, but we can start to reach other areas that actually need the services that we provide. We are able to reach beyond just the people that we physically see or who are within reach to us. We get a chance to really move and expand. And that's how we build community. We're organizations like WRC, we want to build community. People come to us for a service, and not only are we providing a service for you, but we're also providing transformational skills. And that's what DEI does. It gives you transformational skills. And when you get these transformational skills, you share those things, whether or not it's in your family, whether or not it is with, when you're volunteering or your colleagues. And so, we are this work. I can talk about this all day and all night. You can see already, right, Mojdeh?
It sounds as if DEI is woven into your very existence, Bridgett. Could you tell me about your professional background and how you got interested in this field?
Yes. And I have to be totally transparent to say that if anybody told me years ago that I would be doing the work that I'm doing now, I wouldn't believe them. If anybody told me that where I am in my life, in my career, in this DEI space, I wouldn't believe them, because I can honestly tell you the work that I do, I love. And so it's really not work for me because I love it. So getting into this space was what I call just like a happy accident. And so my background is in human resources. And so I've had the amazing opportunity to have a career at Thomas Jefferson University in Jefferson Health going into my 15th year. And with that, I've been able to go to school and get my degree from Jefferson, as well as create my own entrepreneurial journey. And so I've been able to do both. So while creating this entire space and platform for myself, I had the opportunity at Jefferson to really grow. And the more I've gotten a chance to grow, I've gotten opportunities. So anybody listening to us, any of the ladies that are listening to us, it's all about you being your authentic self and positioning yourself so that people know that you have a gift that you can add value to their organization. And so I pride myself in really being able to add value. And when I was approached with the opportunity, when our chief human resource officer was leaving, the opportunity was to stay in human resources or go and help start the diversity department. And at that time, I was, ready for next level of growth. And I took the opportunity, and for a long time, it was just me and the chief diversity officer for like the first year, the two of us. So I got a lot of hands-on training from the start because we built the department. We built the department based on best practices. We built the department based on industry standards. And so I started getting the on-the-job training, started attending not just workshops, but also classes. And I started really embracing the DEI. And the more that I embraced it, the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. The more that I wanted to learn, and I saw the value of really understanding how to communicate properly, really understanding how to create this inclusive atmosphere. I knew that this was a space that I had to be in. And so, through that process, Jefferson has continued to educate me. I'm still taking additional classes now, getting more certification. And so when Cheryl asked me about becoming on the task force for WRC, it was like hands down a no-brainer. Absolutely. And the great thing is that everything that I have been able to share and the work that we've been able to do, it's not just textbook. It's not just things I've heard. No, it's things that I've helped implement, things that I've seen success rates for, things that I've been able to help measure outcomes for. So I'm really, feel so blessed and gracious that, that I get a chance to do what I love and also get a chance to do it, in the space that I love, and that is empowering women.
That is fascinating. And you are in a field that is so aligned with your values and also with your future. That is fantastic. And I was wondering about the DEI space. Is it different to implement DEI in a nonprofit than it is in a corporation?
It is. And so it's different. So one of the things one huge difference that I can tell you is this. So, in a corporation, and I'll use Jefferson for example, the DEI goals can get tied to your compensation. So in a nonprofit, as much as we are implementing goals and strategies, people are here and committed to the goals because their heart is in volunteering for the organization. It doesn't impact their compensation. And so I think that is one of the big differences. And then the other part of that, and so when it comes to the nonprofit, all of us that volunteer, and work and support in this space, we're here not out of obligation. We're here out of the love for the work. So I think that's one difference. The second difference is that the mindset is totally different. Because when it comes to the nonprofit world, I find that it is in the space where you can be more hands-on and more, I don't want to use the word affectionate, but you can massage your wording, you can wordsmith, massage it a little different in the space that we're in for nonprofit than we are for Jefferson. Jefferson, we have like 35,000 employees. So my wordsmithing, the way that I deliver content, the way that I make an impact is different than the way we make an impact for WRC. The audiences are different. And the way that you deliver it is totally different.
Interesting. Very, very fascinating again to know about those differences and your expertise in both areas, crossing worlds, I suppose, coming to nonprofit and going back to for-profit.
Traditional, okay? Nothing is traditional or boring, okay? Yeah, everything that I do, I find myself in a place of wanting to always figure out a way to make it grow, to make it expand, and to make it so impactful that people desire to be a part of it. And I'll share a quick story with you. And that is, a few weeks ago, I had a conversation with another professional colleague. And during the conversation, she asked me, she said, so what do people say about you? And I said, what do you mean? She said, what are words that people describe? What do they say when they talk about you? And I said, well, it's kind of really weird for me to tell you right now what people say about me. But I kind of figured it was some type of exercise, a teachable moment she was trying to give me. I said, well, I have been told that I'm very fashionable, hence I love fashion. I said, I have been told that I'm very confident, in which I am very confident, and I'm not easily intimidated. And I said, and I've been told that I know how to shift an atmosphere. I know how to hold your attention. I said, and I've also been told that I am relatable. And so she said, yeah, she said, keep going, but I want you to get to one thing. And I started naming all these things. And she said, you're close. What is it? And I was like, I don't know. What is it? She said, you cannot be ignored. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I have been in meetings with you. I have been in settings with you where you were not presenting. You were there just as a supportive listener. She said, and your presence made people want to know you. You cannot be ignored. And so when she said that, immediately, my wheels started turning, and I was like, OMG. I've never heard it put that way. So immediately I started thinking, if someone says that's about me, I know that one of the signs of me being an effective leader is that I have to help generate, produce, and create other leaders. Now, how do I take what she said to me, incorporate it in the space that I volunteer, so that I let all of the women know who connect with me at WRC, whether it's DEI or whether it is the luncheon, whether it is networking, that you are so powerful, you cannot be ignored. You don't have to speak, but the fact that you showed up, you cannot be ignored. So I think about that, and I think about, what we're doing today, this conversation, and I've anticipated this conversation. I love WRC, and, I love the entire team that I'm working with. And I love being a part, being inclusive, because I think about WRC's history, and I look from where WRC was to where we are now, especially in the DEI space. There's so much growth. There's so much that the world now, knows who WRC is in a different light and on a different level. And I say that from the perspective that they know when you get to WRC, you can't be ignored.
That's beautiful, Bridgett. You're definitely a builder that brings everyone along. And that's a very highly sought after leadership quality. Bridgett, can you talk to some of the obstacles of DEI implementation and how you face them?
Sure. There's two things I'll share with you. The first thing in particular is this. So you have to really create the space for people to receive when it comes to DEI. Because if you have a group of people who've been doing things for a certain length of time, the same way over and over and over and over, getting them to understand that, even though we've been doing things a certain way, just because you've been doing a certain way doesn't mean it's the right way. And so creating that space for people to be open to hear, open to listen, open to receive is an obstacle. And so once you've created that space and let people know they're safe, then that has been one barrier, that we've been able to cross. And then the second thing is that letting people know that they are acknowledged and they are heard. In DEI, you don't always have all the answers, but we need to acknowledge you and let you know that you are heard.
That's fantastic. The inclusion piece right there, being acknowledged and heard. Thank you so much, Bridgett, for sharing your expertise and experience with us today. WRC is so excited to work with you as a board member and chair of our DEI task force. To our viewers, thank you for watching Women Speak. I look forward to bringing you more in-depth conversations in future episodes. For more information about WRC's programs and services, please visit www.womensresourcecenter.net.